Over the last 15 years of homesteading, we have had sheep on and off. So today on Homesteady, we're going to introduce you to the new sheep. The grass is in this area here. This used to be a section of lawn that I had to come down with a riding lawnmower and mow. But we got ourselves sheep, and now they do the work for us. These sheep are ridiculous. They're getting out and they're escaping like crazy. Sheep are like, if there's a beginner level homestead animal and then there's like an intermediate, sheep are on the expert level homesteader animal. Sheep are dumb animals. Someone's gonna argue with me on that, but sheep are dumb animals. Until we have all the systems ready here, there won't be sheep. We have a huge field full of green, beautiful grass. For us, we should be raising sheep. So sheep, we got some sheep. This has caused quite a stir on our channel in the comments section because everybody knows that Ost is anti-sheep. I don't think sheep are good or bad. I think sheep are sheep. Over our 15 years of homesteading, we have had sheep. I've changed my opinion on sheep big time, and in this video we're going to talk about what we think about sheep for homesteaders. Who are they right for? Who are they not right for? Whether or not you should get them, and our decisions on sheep, where they lie on our homestead, what the future of sheep on the Homesteady homestead are. The very first time we got sheep, it was... So today on Homesteady, we're going to introduce you to the new sheep. It was a disaster, to be honest, and I'll talk about that story a little later. On and off, we've had different kinds of sheep, different breeds. We've had hair sheep and wool sheep, and depending on the sheep in the year, our opinion has gone back and forth a lot. We actually have to go pick up our sheep. They're in a remote field, and we're going to be moving some of them, and we're going to be moving some of them. Boy, those guineas are loud. Let me go somewhere else.
They listen, see.
Crawl in. All right, we got to go out to, why is that locked? Goodness. We have to go get our sheep today. They're in a remote field on the farm, and we're going to bring them down to a closer field, but it's starting to rain, so I got to grab some rain gear. When we first got sheep, this was back at our first farm in Connecticut, and that was a very different farm. And we were very different homesteaders, a lot less experience. We had probably been working with livestock for just a couple years, and we had a really bad experience that first time, which kind of tainted my opinion of sheep.
Is there a sandal here?
All right, we're up on the satellite field. We're tracking down our sheep and goat herd. And we have one goat among them. We had a couple ewes that are bottle bummer babies we've raised. They will follow us anywhere, and as you're gonna see in a minute, they're gonna follow my daughter all the way to the paddock we need them to go to.
We got 10 here.
No, there's 11.
No, I didn't.
There's 11 sheep.
No, there's 10 sheep and 1 goat.
Oh, yeah.
We were at our homestead back in Connecticut, which is a very small homestead with not a lot of what you see here at this homestead pasture. We're starting our tour up on this hill. This hill you can see is a very bright green. It's new pasture grass. We planted all this grass. With just a little bit of pasture. Basically it was like a big space we had used for a garden, and we put some sheep in there. And I had the bright idea at the time of trying to use sheep like a lawnmower. Now, I hate mowing the lawn, and although we have learned it's a necessary evil, we got ourselves goats and sheep, and now they do the work for us. Don't do that. You get yourself a pasture that can go from this to that in just a couple of days. Don't do that. We'll talk about why in a little bit, but just don't do that. It did not work out well. We had a ewe and her ram lamb. After chasing sheep around and them getting out of the fencing and getting horns tangled and just like the beginner mistakes with sheep 101, eventually we had a problem with worms. The ram lamb died with he was like walking around fine 1 minute and then he was dead. That whole experience shook us and we just said, you know what, never mind. Sheep are really hard for beginners. And I still maintain that opinion. Sheep are not a beginner livestock. In fact, we did a whole video where we polled hundreds of different homesteads. In this video, we've ranked livestock from easiest to hardest, but not just based off our opinion. We actually built a questionnaire and we asked anybody with livestock experience, pick an animal you have experience with and say if it was easy, medium, or hard. We got their opinion, people who've raised all different livestock, and we had them grade, you know, from easiest to hardest, where different livestock landed. And sheep, 24% of people said sheep were easy, 55% said they were medium, and 21% said they were hard. So now we're starting to get a lot more into the, you know, 2 out of every 10 said these were hard animals. But 55% solid medium sheep.
Yeah.
There's like easy, and then medium, and then hard, and they were in between like medium and hard. One of the biggest differences between our first homestead and this homestead is the amount of pasture we have. We have so much pasture here. And we brought some cows. Our cow herd has never been really big enough to keep up with the pasture here. And in the summer, we found ourselves kind of having this boom of pasture. We couldn't keep up with it, and we were going through and mowing and cutting pasture a lot just to keep up. And it felt like as we grew and had more experience in the homesteading world, it felt like, you know what, we're wasting this summer boom. We should have more ruminants out here on these pastures while the grass is growing like crazy, and then we could trim down. And that's when we started to bring sheep back, and we didn't try with breeders. We actually just started getting feeder sheep.
They're gonna stampede and try to get milk off of us. So we gotta push it.
You find a sheep farm where they have lambs every spring, and you buy, you know, 5 or 10 little lambs. You get a bunch of those, and then you bring them to your farm, and basically you run them through your pasture during the busy growth period, and they help just keep up with all your grass growth during the peak of the year growth. And then as fall approaches, you take all those and you either butcher them or you sell them, get rid of them, and that way the grass that's growing towards the fall, you save for your cows and your breeder stock. And that's what we started doing, and we started with just a couple, and we had a lot of success with that, and things went much, much better. Over the years, our opinion has completely changed. We've gone from thinking sheep were really, really difficult and never wanting to have them, to now every spring getting some feeder lambs, and then even shifting into having our own flock because things went so well. This sheep move, it wasn't supposed to rain today, but I don't want to complain about the rain because we've had such a drought this year that it's just good to have the rain, good to get the pasture growing again. We're supposed to be stockpiling for fall season. We actually grazed last year into February. We had standing stockpile forage into February. I don't know with the drought we've had this year if that's going to work for us. And that is one of the reasons why every season we do downsize the sheep on the homestead. We can keep a couple ewes over the fall, and ewes can kind of explode. You know, a couple ewes can become a flock of sheep running around in no time, which is both good and bad. So let's talk about, if this sounds good to you, if you're like, oh man, I could use some sheep on my homestead, I got a lot of pasture and I want to have them, you know, help with that. There's some great things about sheep, things that we love, why our mind has been changed over the years, but there are some difficult things, and at the end we're going to give you some advice on, you know, if you're going to get into sheep, they're not easy, how to make sure that it goes smoothly. So first off, let's talk about why I now am a big fan of having sheep on the homestead. The first one, and I think it's the most important one to us, we love lamb. Lamb is delicious. Now, if you've had lamb and you're like, I don't really like lamb, it's gamey. Maybe.
Where's the lamb sauce?
Come on, man.
You had lamb that was a gamier lamb or a more lamby lamb, and that flavor was different than what you're used to, and so you didn't like it. There is a spectrum of flavor in lamb.
This is the lamb.
Where's the lamb
That's the lamb
sauce?
sauce. Right here, chef. Lamb sauce is coming up.
Most people will tell you that if you get hair sheep, and while they're young still, lambs, you have them processed after that first season before they get too big and old. Many people would agree to be the most mild, delicious lamb. That kind of lamb is like a beginner flavor. Now, I found as I got into lamb and more having different lamb dishes and enjoying the actual flavor of lamb, my appreciation for different kinds of lamb has changed. And now I actually like having both. On our homestead, you'll see we have hair sheep. We also have fiber wool sheep. And I've had both. I like both, but most people I find prefer our hair sheep. Find someone who raises hair sheep and try that. And if you like that, then you might consider the other benefits. But if you don't like lamb, then there's no point in raising it on your homestead. You should be raising what you want to eat, so start with that. Next reason that I really like raising lamb is it's actually an animal that, man, you can save money raising. And that is not every animal on the homestead. When we first started homesteading, the idea was we were gonna raise all these animals to save some money. And spoiler alert, most of the animals, it's really hard to actually save money compared to what you can buy like at Walmart or the supermarket. If you're shopping for chicken at your local farmer's market and you're getting, $30 for a whole chicken, yeah, you could probably raise it in your backyard. It would be an equal value product and you'd probably do it cheaper. But if you go down to Walmart and get chicken for $2 a pound, you can never raise meat birds in your backyard for $2 a pound. Not if you're paying attention to all your costs. So, a lot of things you think you're saving money, but you're not. Lamb, oh man. Lamb is a very expensive meat. When you go purchase lamb, even at someplace like Walmart, and definitely if you go to your farmer's market, you're gonna spend a lot of money, even on the lower quality cuts. Ground lamb is gonna be 10 or 12 bucks a pound, and then upward from there, the better cuts on the lamb, the rack of lamb, you could spend so much money buying a nice rack of lamb. Yeah, you can, if you have the pasture to support a herd, you can absolutely save money raising your own lamb. And the other cool thing about lamb, I guess this is point number 3, they're a pretty easy animal to butcher. Of all the animals that you would want to butcher on your homestead, there's not an easier one. Even I think a lamb is easier to do than a bunch of chickens. They're just a pretty simple animal to process if you're teaching yourself. So that's a great plus right there, easy to butcher. Another great thing about lamb is they're very, very self-sufficient. A lot of us want to be more self-sufficient. That's why we come to the homestead life, right? We want to be able to produce food. Wow, that was a big tree that just fell. Yeah, anyway, we want to be more self-sufficient, right? We want to be able to grow our own food in our backyard. And here's the thing that's kind of funny about self-sufficiency. We have talked about this in our videos before, and we could do a whole video on this topic, but like the funny thing about self-sufficiency is you're trying to provide for your family from your land, for food security, to make sure you always have what you need. And so you decide, you know what, I'm gonna get a bunch of livestock so I can feed my family. So you get a bunch of chickens, and what's the first thing you have to go do? You have to go to the feed store and buy a bunch of feed. So now, instead of having to run to Walmart to get your food, you have to run to Tractor Supply and Walmart to get your food, because you're never growing all your stuff. You still gotta run to Walmart or, your farmer's market, wherever you're going. The point is, it's not always really self-sufficient to raise livestock for your family. Sometimes you're more dependent on the system raising the livestock, but not with sheep. If you have good pasture and you're good at either stockpiling or doing your own hay, you can literally feed your sheep almost everything they need from your land forever. You can have a herd that just continually is fed from your land. You might want to get some vitamins and minerals and supplements. Maybe you have some ewes that you want to give a little grain for something or other. Maybe you get some milk replacer if you got to have bummer lambs or something. But they're much easier animal to be very self-sufficient when compared to like a pig or a chicken. Great animal if you have lots of pasture like you can see we do here to rotationally graze them and move them around. That way you always have pasture, and you can do what we do, which is stockpile for the fall. That's a big way to make it more self-sufficient, so you don't have to buy hay in the winter or make your own hay. So great self-sufficiency. You may have noticed lately in some of our videos we have like this barren, fern gully deathscape. There's some construction going on in the part of the homestead that isn't our construction. Other family members are doing projects, and so that's why you see like the lambs ran through here, and it just looks like a barren scene from Fern Gully, but it'll look nice eventually. Another great thing about lamb and sheep, they're very easy to source and they're very easy to sell. So you can usually always find someone locally on Craigslist, Facebook group, whatever your state has for livestock purchasing. You can usually find somebody who has lambs in the spring, whether they're bottle babies, bummers, which is a lamb that the mother is not caring for, a bummer lamb. A lot of people don't like messing with bottle babies, so they're willing to sell those at a discounted price. Or just people selling feeder lambs. That's a pretty popular thing people do. So you can usually find lambs to source your herd from. And then on the flip side, they're easy to sell. So if you decide they're not right for you, it's going to be harder to find a buyer for a cow, especially if you paid a lot for the cow and you want a good return on it. People are always looking for lambs, so if you buy them and they're not right for you, it's easy to sell them. And with that in mind, they're very easy to transport. So going to pick them up or bringing them to someone else's that you want to sell them to, you can put them in the back of your van. Ask me how I know. There we go. Come on, cows! Come on, cows! Come on, cows! Let's go! Come on, cows! Come on, cows! Come on, cows! Come on, cows! Bring them this way, kids. Bring the sheep in. Help them with the sheep. Here, sheepy, sheepy, sheepies. Here, sheepy, sheepy, sheepies. There we go. Yeah. Keep them moving now. Keep them moving. Get them all in. That all of them? That's good. All right, we got all the sheep and all the cows into the new paddock here. That didn't go too bad. It really helps if you have ewes who are bucket trained, bottle babies, will follow you almost anywhere. They lead the whole rest of the flock with them. So even though some of the babies won't follow us, the ewes will, and the babies follow the ewes. This can actually be a con if you're new, but it is definitely a pro of sheep once you know what you're doing. They multiply very quickly. My cows up there, they have a gestation of 9 months, and you're going to get 1 calf out of them, and it's always gonna be a bull. Like half the time you get a bull out of them. So you've seen us with our mini Jersey herd. It grows very slowly. And if you're AIing or if there's a bull, that can be difficult to work with. So it's just a slower growing group of animals. Whereas if you have one ram and like 2 ewes, I mean, look at what's out there now. That's grown in 2 years. We have all those from our couple of ewes. We now have 4 ewes. We have 2 fiber sheep crossed there over my shoulder. Those are our 2 fiber crosses. And then we have St. Croix Wiltshire horn crosses as well. So all of our ewes are crosses. And with that, you get that nice hybrid vigor. We're not trying to develop like a purebred, a specific breed. We're just doing a herd to help keep up with the pasture and produce a lot of yummy lamb. So that's why we have what we have. And they multiply so fast. And mommy, they nursed, both of them? Much quicker than a herd of cows, about as quickly as goats, you'll find. And the reason why is because your ewes will generally have at least twins. Sometimes you can get triplets. Okay, it's okay. Looks like we got a girl there.
Woohoo!
That's one ewe.
These ones with these
This
skinner.
one, this one's got the woolly coat. Oh, there's a boy. One girl, one boy. That's our very first. That's awesome. This is our very first. Our sheep, our ewe. Lamb. We've done lambs many times, but the very first time. Ethel, our good old girl here. First time we've had a lambing on our farm. 15 years of homesteading. That's pretty awesome. I don't remember what their gestation period is, but I'll put it right there, and that's shorter than cows. Another thing that I think makes sheep and lambs easy to work with. They're not large livestock, right? There's not like a danger factor. Rams can be dangerous, so you got to watch sometimes with the rams, but they're not, it's not like working around a bull. Plus, there is the factor, if you're good with your flock, they do listen to the voice of the shepherd. They will come when called, and they're pretty easy to direct. Like you saw us today, get them down here with just a bucket, and we walked through long sections of the farm that aren't fenced, and they could go running off. If you're good with your flock, they will follow you, but that's not always a guarantee, and that does lead us into the cons of sheep. Not everything about sheep is super easy. If you're not a good shepherd, if they're, if they're just an animal that you got off Craigslist who don't know you, if you got feeders who were raised off of a ewe and aren't really friendly with people, sheep can be very flighty and kind of spazzy, and they can wind up like killing themselves, running off cliffs and running and getting tangled in fences, and just like they spook very easily and they wind up doing bad things to themselves. So whereas like a goats by nature are going to be curious and just wind up always in coming back to you. At times your sheep are going to be a lot more difficult to work with. One area that is very apparent in if you're doing rotational grazing is fencing. This rotational grazing fencing, if we were fencing the cows in today, one strand, I could put one strand out here for the cows and they would respect that. They are so easy to fence and work with. These sheep, 3 strands will keep most of them in, and the ones who aren't kept in will stay close because the rest of the flock is here. Fencing becomes much more of an ordeal. Little lambs can slip under our high tensile and escape. We had this naughty batch of lambs this year that were constantly getting out, slipping through the fencing and just going wherever they wanted. Those, well, I'll tell you later in this video how to manage your herd so you don't have a lot of those problems. Oh, I forgot to say in the benefits, but I'm seeing it right now. Another benefit to sheep, in your pasture, they are weed eaters. When you move these animals into a new pasture and you watch and see like, what do the cows go for right away versus what are the sheep going for right away? A lot of times you'll notice the sheep are eating the taller stuff. They're taking all the tops of the weeds off, whereas the cows are putting their tongue down and ripping out the clover and ripping out the timothy. having the sheep in your pasture will definitely help you manage some of your weeds. And they're not afraid to eat some things that you see here, like people around here call these jagger bushes. Sheep will come and chomp the tops of those. They do a lot of the eating of the weeds in the pasture, which is really nice. It's a natural way of some weed management. Behind me here we have some large ruminants and we have some small ruminants. And when it comes to small ruminants, our experience has been health issues are way more big a deal with small ruminants than they are with the large ruminants. I don't know why. I'm not a vet. I haven't studied the health of animals for, a long time. Maybe there's a good answer. Maybe in the comments someone will chime in on why this is the case. Large ruminants, worms can affect them, but nowhere near the level they affect the sheep. Because they're a prey species, they don't like to look sick. It's bad for a prey species to look sick, otherwise the lion goes for that specific animal. Speaking of my African animals, here comes Mrs. Blue. Hi Blue, how are you? Blue's like a puppy dog. So small ruminants like sheep and goats will look fine and walk around and be totally happy and jumping, and then they drop dead. Like it's a thing that happens. It's a protection for them in a herd, but it's not a protection for them on a homestead where you want to know if your animal's sick, and it's hard to know. So sheep, you got to check them, and unlike a goat who's going to come right up to you and want to get scratched and everything, like Miss Blue here, a sheep, even if they're friendly and they come close for a bucket, they don't really want you scratching on them or handling them very much. They're harder to monitor the health of. And they're very susceptible to things like worms. So, or I should say the professional term is parasites. Going to be a lot more of a problem with your sheep than they are for the larger livestock, the larger ruminants, or things like chickens and pigs. Just not a big deal with chickens and pigs. Can be an issue, but nowhere near what it is. You'll have sheep or goats die much quicker to things like parasites. Another thing you may have to consider, not everyone who owns sheep has to consider, shearing. If you have a fiber sheep like those two behind me there, and they have a big thick wool coat, you're going to have to get them sheared. You can shear them yourself, or you can find someone who does that as a service. It's not a big deal. Usually it's not too expensive, but it is something that you need to do, an extra thing that you need to take care of. Now that could be a pro if you actually use the wool, the fiber. That could be a good thing about the sheep. But if you're using them for milk or meat and you're not really interested in doing fiber as a business or making a product out of it, then it's kind of like an extra chore you got to take care of and something you want to consider. Fiber or not, all your sheep are going to need hoof care. That's another thing that you're going to have to watch. Their feet can go really bad if you don't keep up on them. You can have to trim them. It's a skill that you have to develop. So another thing that you're going to have to deal with that not necessarily going to deal with as much with some of your other livestock. It's never been too big of a deal for us. We've never had too many problems with it, but you do have to think about predators with sheep. A lot of people use like an LGD to protect their herd. We are fortunate with the amount of dogs on the family farm, our larger livestock like the cows, and our high tensile electric with a really good shock. We have, I don't think, ever lost a sheep to a predator, but I know even just neighbors around us have had issues where the sheep get out and then you find them dead the next day. A coyote got them. So that is an issue. Not something we've had too many problems with, but people do. I have changed my mind big time on sheep. They went from being an animal that I just didn't want to have on this homestead to being an animal we have the most of during part of this season. I really like working with them now and I love the product. But don't get me wrong, there's a reason why when we asked hundreds of homesteaders, more of them than not said sheep are difficult. They're on the difficult side of medium. They're not the hardest animals you're ever going to have, but they can be a real challenge. So what can you do if you're thinking about getting sheep to make it easier and to have a better transition into sheep ownership? Here's a couple tips if you think about getting sheep. First off, don't get sheep if your land or your setup is not correct. If you're going to pasture them on pasture, you need a lot of it, and you want to have good quality pasture, not too much weedy browse, not like forest, but good open pastures. It's okay if weeds are growing in it like you see in our pasture, but you want to have a lot of it because you're going to want to move them around. If you're pasturing sheep and you don't want them to get wormy, you got to keep moving them. If you keep them on one pasture all summer long, they're going to get worm problems and you're going to lose them. So have them and move them. And that's why they're not a good way to mow your lawn. So don't do that. You get yourself a pasture that can go from this to that. Because if you try to get them to mow right down like a lawnmower, they're going to be pooping and the worms wind up on that little lower area of pasture. They ingest a lot of worms and they die. That's what happened to us years ago when we first started. So don't use them like lawnmowers. Use them as a pasture management tool. They help with the tops of the weeds, and if you keep moving them, they'll help control the weed growth in your pastures, and they won't eat a lot of worms, and they'll be healthy and happy, and you'll be happy. Now that said, you can raise sheep on a dry lot. So if you don't have skill with worms or you don't have a lot of pasture, keep them on concrete, keep them on gravel. Just make sure they're not eating off the ground again, otherwise they're gonna get the worms. Feed them up and keep it clean. Make sure when you pick out your sheep, you're getting a good breed and a good line. You'll find with some of the bigger breeds, you can get an animal that's called a Katahdin and another one that's called a Katahdin, and they can be very different kinds of sheep. I've heard that from a lot of people who've owned Katahdin specifically, but it goes with a lot of the bigger breeds. So don't just pick a breed that works for you, but make sure the line that you're choosing is something that will work good in your climate and good in your area and good with your management style. You see what we do with our sheep. They're in there with goats, they're in there with cows. Sometimes we'll run them with chickens and pigs. Interspecies grazing helps with the worm issue, and it helps your pastures too with the management of the pastures. So if you can, have sheep with something else whose worms don't work in each other. Essentially, the cows can eat the worms in the sheep and vice versa, and it helps everybody stay healthy. If you're new to sheep, don't try to become a breeder right away. Get some feeders, get some bummers, see if you like them, and if you don't, eat them and you're done. Don't get into breeding. That's a whole new world and it's more advanced and a lot more problems come with that. So just start with feeders, bummer lambs, bottle babies. At our homestead, you see we have that high tensile perimeter. Having a good perimeter is a great thing. Down here at the barn, we actually have woven wire. So the real little lambs and the new sheep get trained in the woven wire with a electric runner on the inside. They learn to respect the fence, and if they don't, we can contain them down here. Have some good solid perimeter and make sure some of it is woven wire because the high tensile isn't going to keep everybody in. LGDs, if you have a problem with predators, LGDs are a great way to make your life easier if you know how to work with an LGD. So it's a new animal to bring on and a whole other thing, but it can help keep your sheep alive. This is a big one, and it's why I like having a flock of sheep. Cull. If you have a big flock and you're not scared to remove certain ewes from that or certain rams from that because you have so many, it makes culling easier. If you just have one cow and one bull and then you have another heifer, you're not likely to cull either of those because you only have two. But if you have like 4 or 5 ewes and you notice one of them is always getting out of the fence or always fighting worms or just really sickly or bad feet, eat her. Or just don't breed her, but don't keep passing on those bad traits. Cull. It'll make your herd better in the long run, and you want to buy from a source who does cull for things like parasite resistance, good feet, good mothers. You want to find a really good quality animal, and that's why we mentioned looking at good, not only breed, but good lines. Find a breeder who knows what they're doing and is doing the same things that you're going to want to do on your homestead. Now, we've worked with sheep for years and we have a lot more experience. We love them, but we're not sheep experts. So I went to our Homesteady community because we have some real experts in this community, and they shared some amazing tips that you're going to want to remember if you're getting into sheep.
Life raising sheep.
Steph and Chris from Hickory Croft Farm, you've seen them on this channel before. They've been working with sheep for 10 years. They had some great advice for beginners. Start small and develop a long-term plan to accomplish what you're hoping to get out of raising sheep. We've always personally wanted a triple-purpose animal, meat, milk, and fiber, and it has taken us 10 years to get there. But it was taking it step by step, Triple purpose animal sounds awesome. If you want to find out what kind of sheep they raise, check out Life Raising Sheep, their new channel, which is focused all on raising sheep. And apparently they're triple purpose sheep. Satori Studios has a really great YouTube channel. If you're thinking about getting sheep, go and check them out.
Hello shepherds! With spring coming up fast, I'm pretty excited for this year's lambs. We have a handful of ewes due to deliver. And one of the best parts of Shetland sheep is that you never know what color you're gonna get.
Their advice was to get a breed that works for your climate and lifestyle, which was really great advice. And also mention something that I forgot to talk about. One of the main killers of sheep, in addition to parasites, dogs. So make sure you're prepared not only to keep your sheep in, but the other neighborhood animals out, which may sadly even include your own if they're not properly trained to deal with sheep. Manda told us to have a treatment facility ready before buying sheep. Trying to catch and treat sheep is a battle. Parasites kill quickly. Even a small makeshift treatment chute made out of pallets is better than nothing. That's a great tip. Have it ready, because it's definitely harder to catch them in the field. One of the reasons I love the comments section is because I'm constantly learning new things, like what I learned from Jared Hicks. He says, don't buy cheap to start, you will regret it. Look for animals with upright pasterns. This will help their hooves to wear better. I've been making this a priority for 5 years now and have not trimmed feet in 5 years. I've never heard about that. I did a little research. I found this cool image to back it up. Jared Hicks, thanks for teaching me and a lot of our Homesteady audience something today. Not trimming feet in 5 years would be pretty amazing, so check that out. I'll link to this post that we did on our YouTube channel. There's a lot of great information there. I could not include it all in this video, but go and give it a read and join in the conversation if you have something to add. It'll be up forever, so we can keep adding good, helpful tips to this post. Anyone who shared those tips who has a channel or social media, I'll link to them below. Go check them out, say hi from a Homesteady fan. Thank them for sharing those tips because we love sharing. We have so many good experts in our audience who can share so much. Sheep are a great addition to the right homestead, but there are a lot of livestock to choose from. And if you're trying to pick out what would be best for you and you're a beginner, definitely go and watch that video that we talked about. What is the best and worst livestock for beginners? We asked hundreds of homesteads to weigh in. We got an average from all those homesteads and found out what livestock is best for beginners, all the way to the most advanced livestock. Find out where sheep ranked in relation to other livestock, and maybe that'll help you pick what's right for your homestead.